Have you ever held a switchblade in your hand and you hit that button on the side of the blade and the blade just kind of jumps out? It's quite the feeling, actually. A few years ago I was in Florida and some person, I won't name him, gave the opportunity for me and my son to just try holding the switchblade. And I can't tell you how many times I hit that button, the blade jumps out, I reset it, and I hit the button again. And when you think of a 1950s juvenile delinquent from New York City, what are some things that you think of? Well, for one, I think of black leather jackets, I think of the duck's ass haircut, and for the weapon, I think of a switchblade. And so before I go into the story, drop a comment down below. I'm kind of curious to see how many switchblade owners are watching this video and what you like so much about the blade that you own. Bedford-Stuyvesant was perhaps one of the most notorious and gang-ridden neighborhoods in the 1950s in New York City. Now, two of the most infamous gangs from this area were the Chaplains and the Bishops. But, like gangs in the late 1950s, for every well-known gang, such as the Chaplains and the Bishops, there were many more little gangs, ones that were very small, just tiny groups of boys who had a turf of only maybe a block or two. And there was a gang in the south part of Bedford-Stuyvesant called the Savons. I hope I'm saying it right. But they identified themselves as a social club, but that was a bit of a misnomer. It was more likely that they called themselves a social club because of self-preservation, because, let's face it, admitting to being a fighting gang wasn't a good thing for them if they were caught in a crime. The Savons had a clubhouse at 798 Bergen Street in Bed-Stuy, which wasn't too far from the infamous Bishops gang who hung out on Fulton and Franklin Streets. Now, the Bishops wanted the Savons to join them, and when they refused, the Bishops interrupted their meetings and they beat up 3 members of the Savons on Halloween night in 1952. Now, James Smith, who was one of the members of the Savons, decided that he needed to protect himself. Kind of makes sense. So he made himself a zip gun, 22 caliber, and he got 10 cartridges, and he bought a switchblade with a 2.5-inch blade, and the price in 1952 was 98 cents. So it was one day that Thomas Sullivan, shield number 2929 of the 80th Precinct, was on patrol on December 10, 1952. It was about 11 p.m. and he was driving around with Sergeant Ernest Witt when he received an alarm signal 32, that's what it was called, that there was a prowler at 740 Classen Avenue, incidentally not too far from the Savon clubhouse. He immediately went to 740 Classen Avenue and found James Smith in the doorway. So he searched James and found his 22 caliber zip gun and his switchblade with a 2.5-inch long blade. He also found 6 rounds of ammunition in another pocket. So he asked James where he got the gun, and he told him that he made it and he carried it around for protection against the Bishops. James didn't get into too much trouble and he got probation for this. Now, in 1953, the Savons changed their name to the Ticos, and they engaged in some vicious wars, not with the Bishops, but with a gang called the Playboys. In 1954, James and some accomplices gained access to a garage to steal a car, and they got access through a skylight, and when the police came to inspect the place, a rope was dangling from the window to the ground. The police got involved, and while they were on radio motor patrol to see what was up, Patrolman Brooks got a call that several youths were suspected of being in a stolen car. So he responded to the call and he found the vehicle in question and was parked. And guess who was inside? James Smith. He was at the wheel along with several of his friends. So the patrolman searched the car and he found a meat cleaver, a bayonet, and another part of the report it said it was a sword, and an air rifle. James told the police that there was a gang war raging between the El Ticos and the Gaylords for several days. Now, James's nickname was El Tico, but he denied being a member of the gang. And James said that on the weekend of November 5 or 12, he couldn't remember, of 1954, the war had raged for 3 days, and they were fighting with beer bottles, zip guns, and stones. And one of the El Ticos was actually slashed, and he required 8 stitches. And the Gaylords actually tried storming the home of this El Tico who was slashed, but his sister threw a pot of hot water and lye on them to disperse them. Now, James admitted he allowed the El Ticos to pile up weapons in the car that he stole for a retaliatory strike against the Gaylords. Again, James vehemently denied he was a gang member, even though his nickname was after the gang. But the police felt that he was a leader in the gang, and that the entire gang had been terrorizing the neighborhood with fights, during which many innocent bystanders were hurt. The police also said that the boys, including James Smith, were streetwise kids and they would deny any involvement in criminal acts when they were questioned by the police. And James Smith was described as a pathological liar. No doubt he tried to paint himself in the most positive light to get away with it. But nobody believed James, and they certainly didn't believe his protests that he wasn't a member of the gang. And he actually got a 5-year sentence to a reformatory, which is quite a bit longer than the typical 3-year sentence, which was usually handed out in situations like this. Well, that was a short one. Now you know how much a Switchblade cost in 1952, 98 cents. And you got to hear a little bit about James Smith and the El Ticos, and a little bit about a Brooklyn neighborhood from 1952 to 1954. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.